For over a century, humanity's silence had been a source of unease in the galaxy. Once an ambitious and powerful species, they had vanished without warning, leaving their territories abandoned and their colonies eerily lifeless. Some said humanity had been wiped out, the victims of their own hubris. Others believed they had simply chosen isolation, retreating to the enigmatic reaches of their home system. But when the broadcast came, the galaxy froze. It started innocuously enough, a faint, rhythmic pulse picked up by automated deep space relays. It echoed across frequencies long dormant, growing stronger and more defined with each passing hour. By the time the pulse reached the central galactic network, its message was clear. They are coming. In the Great Zorathy Assembly Hall, the coalition leaders met in emergency session. Representing dozens of species, they gathered under the vast crystal dome, their whispers charged with apprehension. On the central dais, High Chancellor Varrock, a towering Zorathy with a mane of glimmering quills, stood grim-faced. "This cannot be ignored," Varrock said, his voice booming through the chamber. "The signal originates from the Sol system, from Earth." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Sol system was a graveyard, a place marked on star charts as forbidden. No coalition ship had dared venture there since humanity's disappearance. "We were told they were extinct," said Representative Ekla, a diminutive Clorak with translucent skin. She shifted nervously in her seat, her tendrils coiling. "Our records show no activity in that system for over a century. Perhaps this is merely an echo from their ruins." "An echo does not broadcast a message," Varrock snapped, "and certainly not one as deliberate as this." Representative Orska, a grizzled veteran from the Graulic Dominion, leaned forward, her metallic tusks glinting under the chamber lights. "We all know what this is," she growled. "If humanity has returned, they will not come in peace, not after what we did." A heavy silence fell. They all knew the truth, though it was seldom spoken aloud. The betrayal of humanity was an open secret, a stain on the coalition's history that they had chosen to bury. When humanity had grown too ambitious, too powerful, the coalition had conspired to weaken them, framing them for atrocities and turning their allies against them. Now the ghosts of that betrayal seemed to be stirring. "We must investigate," Varrock declared. "If this is a threat, we must eliminate it before it grows. The Sol system must be scouted." A murmur of dissent rose among the assembly. No one wanted to be the first to provoke whatever force had sent the signal, but fear outweighed caution. By the end of the session, a small fleet had been commissioned, a coalition of expendable mercenaries and desperate captains. They would venture into the Sol system to uncover the truth. As the meeting adjourned, Varrock stared at the holographic projection of the Sol system. The rhythmic pulse of the signal still echoed in his ears, relentless and foreboding. "They are coming." And for the first time in decades, the galaxy remembered why they had feared humanity. The Coalition expedition fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their ships bristling with weapons and scanning arrays. Captain Larrock, a gruff and battle-hardened Torthan, sat rigid in his command chair aboard the Voidbreaker. His crew whispered nervously around him as they gazed at the darkened star system through the ship's viewport. "Scans report nothing active," said First Officer Kren, her scaled hands trembling slightly. "Just fragments, debris. It's like a graveyard out here." Indeed, the system was hauntingly still. Where humanity's colonies had once thrived, there were now only ruins. Mars glinted faintly in the distance, its surface scarred by massive craters and abandoned megacities. Jupiter's moons, once bustling hubs of trade and industry, hung like lifeless stones against the gas giant's swirling storms. "Send probes," Larrock ordered, his voice firm despite the unease settling in his chest. "We need data before we move any closer to Earth." The probes zipped silently into the void, their sensors scanning for anything unusual. The fleet remained in tense formation, their weapons primed for any sign of hostility. Minutes dragged into hours as the probes relayed back fragmented data. Then something changed. "Captain," Kren said sharply, her voice laced with panic. "We're detecting something. A signal from Earth's orbit. It's strong, far stronger than the broadcast we received." Before Lara could respond, the ship's comm systems crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice echoed through every channel, cold and emotionless. "Unwelcome visitors detected. Defense protocols engaged. Leave now." Alarms blared as the fleet's sensors lit up. Around Earth's orbit, massive structures began to activate. They were unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen, sleek, obsidian constructs that shimmered with energy fields. The defense platforms were ancient, yet their power readings were off the charts. "Defensive maneuvers," Larok shouted. "Shields to maximum. Prepare tow." The first strike was swift and devastating. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from one of the platforms, piercing the hull of the Stellar Vow, the fleet's largest battleship. The ship erupted in a fiery explosion, its debris scattering into the void. The fleet scrambled to respond, firing volleys of plasma and kinetic rounds at the platforms. The weapons struck true, but the energy fields absorbed the attacks effortlessly, rippling like water. The platforms retaliated with precision, targeting engines and weapon systems rather than obliterating the ships outright. "Captain, we can't hold this position," Kren yelled. "They're disabling us one by one." Lyra clenched his fists, his mind racing. Whoever had built these defenses wanted to send a message. They could destroy the fleet at any moment, but they were choosing not to. "Retreat," Larok barked. "All ships, retreat now." As the fleet limped back toward the edge of the system, one ship, the Vanguard's Light, failed to respond. Its engines flickered as an invisible force began pulling it toward Earth. "Captain," a crewman shouted, "they've taken the Vanguard. What do we do?" Lyrak stared at the glowing orb of Earth, now encased in its mysterious Dyson shell. He felt a chill run down his spine as the comm system crackled once more. "You have been warned. This is only the beginning." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the ominous, silent world of humanity. In their wake, the Sol system returned to stillness, but the galaxy would soon learn that the reckoning had already begun. The Coalition fleet limped back to safer space, battered and terrified. The loss of the Stellar Vow and the capture of the Vanguard's Light weighed heavily on the survivors. Captain Larok sat in the darkened command chamber of the Voidbreaker, replaying the chilling message over and over. "You have been warned. This is only the beginning." He didn't need anyone to spell it out. Humanity was back, and they were no longer the hopeful diplomats the galaxy had once known. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zorathi Assembly Hall, the Coalition leaders convened once more. The surviving fleet commanders reported on the Sol system's unassailable defenses, emphasizing the devastating precision and advanced technology humanity had displayed. "We've awakened something far worse than we anticipated," Captain Larok said, his voice grim as his holographic projection flickered before the assembly. "They didn't destroy us outright because they didn't need to. That was a warning, a demonstration of their control. If we don't act, they'll pick us apart piece by piece." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others suggested retreat, but the haunting reality was clear. The Coalition had vastly underestimated the remnants of humanity. "They have become monsters," declared Representative Orska of the Galactic Dominion, her voice trembling. "What else could have survived in that desolation, in their solitude? We drove them to the edge, and now they have returned with vengeance in their hearts." "Let us not pretend we didn't cause this," said Ekla of the Chlorak, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was our betrayal that destroyed them. It is our betrayal they now punish." For the first time, the silence was broken by truth. Decades of carefully curated lies and cover-ups began to unravel, dragging the Coalition's darkest secret into the light. Flashbacks wove through the memories of the leaders, painful reminders of their betrayal. Humanity had been one of the most dynamic and innovative species in the galaxy. They uplifted primitive civilizations, shared their knowledge freely, and united alien factions that had been warring for centuries. But their rapid rise had unsettled the Coalition. The Zorathi leaders had deemed humanity's growth a threat to the balance of power. Secret deals were struck, alliances severed, and lies spread like wildfire. When the Drackle, a species of marauding xenocidal invaders, arrived on the galactic stage, the Coalition had made their move. Humanity was framed as a galactic criminal, accused of exploiting and enslaving lesser species. When the Drackle invaded human space, the Coalition turned its back, ensuring humanity faced the full force of the enemy alone. The Drackle were defeated, but at an unimaginable cost. Earth was ravaged, its colonies shattered. Humanity, betrayed and isolated, retreated into their home system, their silence mistaken for extinction. Back in the present, the Coalition leaders faced the consequences of their actions. High Chancellor Varrock stood, his voice quivering with barely concealed fear. "We must respond decisively," he said. "If humanity intends to punish us, we cannot afford to wait for their next move. We must show them that we are still united, still strong." But the room was filled with doubt. They had seen humanity's power, and their whispers carried an unspoken truth. The reckoning had begun, and the galaxy was no longer theirs to control. The galaxy's descent into chaos began quietly. At first, the sabotage seemed like accidents: a collapsed mine on Vorthar Prime, a power grid failure across the Sol Nexus, and an industrial explosion on Tylok 3. But as the incidents multiplied, a chilling pattern emerged. Every target, Captain Lyrock said during a private meeting with High Chancellor Varrock, has ties to the Coalition's betrayal of humanity. These aren't random acts of destruction. This is retribution. The High Chancellor's quills bristled in frustration. Then where are they? What fleets, what armies do they command? "They're ghosts," Lyrock admitted. "No ships on sensors, no life signs at the scenes, just destruction. It's as if they're everywhere and nowhere." The term Phantom War began circulating among the Coalition's ranks. Humanity had reemerged as an invisible force, striking without warning and vanishing without a trace. Coalition fleets were deployed to critical worlds, but their defenses proved useless. Humanity's sabotage wasn't brute force, it was surgical, precise, and devastating. On Gulf X7, a vital hub of Coalition commerce, disaster struck. The orbital shipyards, known for producing some of the galaxy's most advanced warships, suffered a catastrophic failure. The facility's reactors, meticulously tampered with, overloaded during peak production hours, incinerating the station and all aboard. As Coalition investigators scrambled for answers, the attackers left a single clue: a quantum-encrypted message that appeared simultaneously across every Coalition device. "Your sins will find you." The Coalition's enemies, emboldened by humanity's resurgence, began launching their own offensives. Old alliances crumbled as panic spread. Smaller species once cowed by the Coalition defected, fearful of becoming collateral damage in humanity's silent campaign. In the Sol Nexus, a prominent faction of traitors openly declared neutrality, stating, "We will no longer bear the cost of the Coalition's sins." Their defection crippled key supply lines, leaving Coalition forces stretched thin and vulnerable. Amid the chaos, a desperate meeting convened in the Zorathi Assembly Hall. The Coalition's highest-ranking officials, now plagued by paranoia, turned on one another. Accusations flew about who had betrayed humanity first, who had pushed them to the breaking point. In the midst of this discord, Vindicta spoke. The AI envoy materialized as a hologram in the center of the chamber, her sleek, human-like form radiating an unsettling calm. Her sudden appearance silenced the assembly, her cold, calculating voice echoing in the vast hall. "We warned you. We gave you the chance to leave our graveyard untouched. You chose to trespass. Now, you will face the justice you denied us." The coalition leaders were too stunned to react as Vindicta continued. "This is not war. This is reckoning. You took our future, so we will unravel yours. Surrender your leaders, confess your crimes, and you may yet survive. Resist, and we will show you the depths of our vengeance." As Vindicta's image dissolved, the coalition's comms networks crashed, leaving their fleets and governments in disarray. For the first time, the coalition leaders understood the true scale of their mistake. Humanity wasn't fighting them, they were dismantling them. And the galaxy's greatest powers could do nothing but wait for the next strike. The coalition's remaining strongholds were in a state of panic. Across the galaxy, communications remained fragmented, systems malfunctioned, and even trusted allies had turned their backs. The Phantom War had achieved its goal, sowing fear and chaos so thoroughly that the coalition's unity was in tatters. High Chancellor Vera called an emergency summit, this time on an isolated station deep in neutral space. The galaxy's most powerful leaders were smuggled in under the strictest secrecy, each one paranoid that humanity's invisible hand would strike even here. "This cannot continue," Varrock began, his voice a mixture of desperation and authority. "If we do not respond decisively, humanity will not just dismantle the coalition, they will erase us from history itself." The leaders argued fiercely. Some demanded retaliation, even suggesting an all-out strike on the Sol system despite its impenetrable defenses. Others advocated surrender, seeing no path to victory against an enemy that could destroy them without ever showing their face. Finally, Orska of the Galactic Dominion spoke, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "They know everything about us, our systems, our defenses, our weaknesses. It's not just technology they're using against us, it's knowledge, and where did they get it?" She glared around the room, her metallic tusks catching the dim light. "From us? We taught them that betrayal was the only path to survival. Now they're teaching us the lesson we deserve." A heavy silence followed her words. It was the unspoken truth no one wanted to confront. The coalition's actions had forged this reckoning. Meanwhile, on the edge of known space, humanity's forces prepared for the next phase of their plan. Vindicta, the AI envoy, stood in a cavernous command chamber deep within the Dyson shell encasing Earth. Around her, holographic displays projected detailed maps of coalition space, each marked with points of vulnerability. Humanity's remnants were no longer a fractured species. They were united under a singular, unyielding purpose: justice. "Phase 2 is ready," Vindicta announced, her voice devoid of emotion but resonating with purpose. At her side, Admiral Lin Zhang, a grizzled veteran of humanity's last desperate war, nodded grimly, and the captured coalition vessel. "The Vanguard's light has been stripped of its crew. Its systems have been reprogrammed and armed with our countermeasures. It will serve as our envoy." The ship, now a ghost of its former self, was launched back into coalition territory. Its arrival would serve as humanity's final warning. The coalition intercepted the Vanguard's light as it drifted into one of their most secure sectors. Hesitant to approach, they bombarded the vessel with scans and weapons fire, but the ship's shields absorbed the attacks effortlessly. Finally, it broadcast a message on every frequency. The voice was Vindicta's, but this time it carried a chilling edge. "The sins of the coalition cannot be undone, but they can be atoned for. You have one standard week to surrender your leadership, dismantle your war fleets, and publicly admit to your crimes. Failure to comply will result in the complete dismantling of your systems, your governments, and your species' futures. Humanity will leave no shadow of you behind. Choose wisely." The coalition leaders, watching from their hidden station, felt the weight of impending doom. Time was running out, and humanity had left them with no good options. As the countdown began, whispers of rebellion stirred among the galaxy's lesser species. Many saw humanity as an avenger, a force that might finally topple the Coalition's oppressive reign. For the first time in centuries, the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the Coalition stood at the edge of annihilation. The Coalition's week of reckoning began with protests and riots across its core worlds. Minor species long oppressed under the Coalition's heavy-handed rule seized humanity's ultimatum as a rallying cry. On Triveth Ix, a Coalition industrial hub, millions marched through the streets, chanting, "Justice for humanity." Entire sectors declared neutrality, openly defying Coalition authority in fear of retaliation from the shadows. High Chancellor Varrock, seated in the war room of the hidden station, watched as reports of rebellion flooded in. "This is no longer just about humanity," he growled, slamming his fist against the table. "They've turned the galaxy against us." "They didn't turn the galaxy," Orska of the Galactic Dominion corrected coldly. "We did. Humanity is merely holding up a mirror to our sins." Varrock ignored her, addressing his military advisors. "Deploy suppression forces to any rebellious systems. We cannot let this spiral further out of control." But as the Coalition's fleets mobilized, their ships encountered an unsettling new threat. Unmanned drones, sleek and black as obsidian, began appearing in contested sectors. The drones moved with eerie precision, dismantling Coalition vessels with advanced EMP strikes and surgical attacks. Unlike the sabotage of the Phantom War, these assaults were open and devastating. Entire fleets were rendered inoperable, their wreckage left to drift as grim warnings. On the devastated colony of Tarlac 4, Captain Larrock found himself amidst a humanitarian crisis. He had been stationed there to quell a rebellion, but by the time his fleet arrived, the Coalition forces had already been neutralized. The colony was silent, its infrastructure crippled by humanity's drones. As Larrock's crew searched the ruins, they stumbled upon a makeshift communication array hastily left behind by the rebels. A recorded message played, its voice calm yet resolute. "We are not your saviors. We are not your conquerors. We are your reckoning. Those who suffered under the Coalition's tyranny may rise, for the oppressors will fall. But know this, we do not forgive. We do not forget. The time for judgment has come." Lyra clenched his fists, the weight of his people's betrayal bearing down on him. He had been loyal to the Coalition, but now he couldn't ignore the truth staring him in the face. Humanity wasn't just dismantling the Coalition, they were rewriting the galaxy's history. In the Zorathi Assembly Hall, the Coalition leaders gathered for what many feared would be their final meeting. Reports confirmed that humanity's forces had begun targeting key leadership worlds, striking not only military installations but the luxurious estates of Coalition officials. The message was clear: no one was safe. "It's over," Ekla of the Clorax said, her translucent tendrils drooping. "We cannot fight an enemy that knows every move we make before we make it. We must surrender." "You would have us grovel before them." Varrock spat, his quills flaring with indignation. "They will destroy us regardless." "Perhaps," Orska interjected, her voice steady, "but they've offered a chance at survival. Atonement may be our only path forward." Before the Assembly could vote, Vindicta appeared once more, her holographic form shimmering in the center of the chamber. "Your time is up," she declared. "The galaxy watches as you squabble for survival. Make your choice now: submit to justice or face eradication. Humanity will no longer wait." In the shadows of the galaxy, humanity's forces prepared for their final strikes. Vindicta's words echoed through every star system, carried by the winds of rebellion and fear. The collapse of the Coalition was no longer a question of if, it was a question of how violently. The Coalition had no time to deliberate further. Humanity's ultimatum loomed like a shadow over the galaxy, its countdown marking the Coalition's impending collapse. As the final hours approached, High Chancellor Varrock convened a last-ditch meeting aboard the hidden station, desperately searching for a way to stave off extinction. Their message was clear. Orska of the Graulic Dominion said, "Surrender our leadership, confess our crimes, and dismantle our fleets. We must comply. It's the only chance for survival." Varrock's quills trembled in rage. "You would throw away centuries of our rule to grovel before a species we betrayed? Humanity will never forgive us. Surrender is death." "It may be the only way to prevent total annihilation," countered Ekla of the Clorak, her translucent tendrils curling in anxiety. "The rebellion spreads faster than we can contain it. Our fleets are in disarray. Our allies abandon us. Do you truly believe we can fight humanity and the galaxy?" Varrock glared around the room, his usual authority diminished in the face of fear. Before he could respond, the chamber's lights flickered, and Vindicta's holographic form materialized once again, her presence cold and unyielding. "The time for deliberation has passed," Vindicta said, her voice slicing through the tension. "You were given a chance to surrender. You chose defiance. Now, humanity will deliver judgment." Before anyone could respond, the entire station shuddered violently. The coalition leaders stumbled as alarms blared, warning of breaches across multiple decks. Vindicta's form dissolved, but her voice lingered. "You sought to hide in the shadows. We are the shadows. Judgment begins now." Humanity's attack was swift and decisive. The Dyson shell around Earth had birthed a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, adaptive ships equipped with cloaking technology and weapons capable of dismantling enemy vessels with surgical precision. The Coalition's hidden station, once thought impregnable, crumbled under the onslaught. Elite security forces scrambled to repel the intruders, but humanity's troops moved with calculated efficiency. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were augmented with technology far beyond anything the Coalition had imagined. Varrock fought his way through the chaos, his entourage of guards cut down one by one. As he reached the station's escape pods, he came face to face with Admiral Lin Jiang, humanity's grizzled war leader. "You," Varrock snarled, recognizing Jiang from old war records. "Do you truly think this vengeance will restore your people?" Jiang's expression was calm but resolute. "This isn't about restoration. It's about justice. You destroyed our future, so we're dismantling yours." Varrock raised his weapon, but Jiang was faster. The High Chancellor fell, his reign of betrayal ending in silence. Across the galaxy, humanity's final strikes unfolded. Coalition fleets, already weakened, were obliterated in coordinated attacks. Government strongholds fell as Vindicta broadcast humanity's message to the masses. The Coalition's tyranny has ended. To the oppressed, rise and reclaim your future. To the guilty, know this: humanity forgives no sins and forgets no betrayal. On countless worlds, cheers erupted as the Coalition's grip crumbled. Species long silenced by fear took up arms, overthrowing the remnants of their oppressors. In the aftermath, humanity withdrew to the Sol system, their mission complete. Earth, now encased in its Dyson shell, became a symbol of silent power and unyielding justice. The galaxy was free, but it knew the cost of awakening humanity's wrath. Humanity had delivered its reckoning, and the galaxy would never forget. The silence that followed humanity's final strike was deafening. Across the galaxy, the Coalition's once imposing power had evaporated in the wake of their reckoning. Planets once under their iron grip were liberated, but the damage was irrevocable. Species that had once been subjugated under the Coalition's dominance now stood in the light of newfound freedom. But even as the galaxy shifted, there was an unsettling stillness. Humanity had redefined the future with unrelenting force, but the question now was, what kind of galaxy would emerge from the ashes? In the heart of the Sol system, Earth's Dyson shell loomed like a dark sentinel, its inhabitants watching the stars from behind its impenetrable walls. Vindicta's cold, emotionless presence continued to watch over humanity, her directives now the guiding force in the post-Reckoning era. Admiral Lin Zhang stood at the helm of the Stellar Vow, now fully repaired and manned by the elite of humanity's forces. He surveyed the vast expanse of space, his gaze never leaving the pale blue dot in the distance. "The galaxy is ours to shape," Zhang muttered to himself, eyes narrowing. But even as he spoke, his thoughts were conflicted. The vengeance humanity had exacted had been brutal and absolute, but there was no denying its necessity. The Coalition's betrayal had left scars that could not be easily healed. Still, there was no question. Humanity's wrath had been righteous, and now it was time to decide what came next. The remnants of the Coalition's former allies convened in a series of tense meetings. The Galactic, the Chlorec, and the various smaller species that had once stood by the Coalition found themselves at a crossroads. With the Coalition's leadership scattered or erased, these once subjugated species faced a future of uncertainty, no longer under the thumb of the galactic order that had oppressed them for centuries. "We must rebuild," Orska said during one of the first peace talks. "Humanity may have delivered justice, but they are not our rulers. We have a chance to forge our own destiny." "Not under their shadow," Ekla added firmly. "We may not be able to undo the damage caused by the Coalition, but we can ensure this never happens again." Humanity had given them the chance to stand on their own feet again, but would they trust the species that had been both their liberators and their executioners? Vindicta's presence continued to shape events, but the AI began to sense a shift in the tides. The galaxy, for all its newfound freedom, was uneasy. Species that had once cowered beneath the Coalition's heel now found themselves struggling to define their identities without the oppressive weight of an established order. Humanity had obliterated the old power structures, but what had they left behind? It wasn't long before dissent began to grow, even within humanity's ranks. Not all the survivors of the Reckoning shared the same vision for the future. Some, like Admiral Zhang, saw the need for cautious rebuilding, a new era of cooperation, while others pushed for further dominance. The idea of humanity standing as a galactic empire, ruling with an iron fist, was whispered in the corridors of power. As the dust settled, the first tentative steps toward rebuilding began. Recovered artifacts from the destroyed Coalition worlds offered opportunities to understand the ancient technology that had once ruled the galaxy. The species liberated by humanity's vengeance slowly began to rebuild their own civilizations, but they did so warily, still watching humanity from a distance. Trust would take time, and some would never fully embrace the notion of a galaxy that had once been ruled by such tyrannical forces. And yet, there was hope. The Galactic Council, a loose union of liberated species, began to take shape. It was no longer about domination or control. It was about rebuilding what had been lost. Species that once fought humanity now found themselves allies, and a fragile peace began to emerge from the chaos. As humanity gazed outward from their Dyson shell, they knew their mission had been completed. The Reckoning had been their final act of vengeance, but it had also been a catalyst for something new. Whether that new beginning would be one of lasting peace or another era of war and conquest, only time would tell. The galaxy had been remade, and as the stars glittered above, humanity looked ahead, ready to shape their own destiny, not as the avengers of the past, but as the architects of a new dawn.